September 3rd, 2014. My name is Brian Cox. I'm calling for a federal investigation into the police actions, corruption, and as well as the practice of the courts, the magistrate courts here in Belen, New Mexico. Due to the fact of nightmare living here for 4 years, and the fact of this police harassment that has gone on way long enough. But this police harassment includes, and everything is documented with pictures, audio, video from police uniforms, 911 calls, both hard copy, and audio. And the fact that the escalation in the reports against me as being one-sided, as being filled with false, let's just say it, filled with lies. Police reports here are filled with lies. The police reports are against me, and especially the ones where I'm actually the victim, which is most of these, well, actually all of them. I don't call just to call and get 911 help from cops. I don't need their help. Trust me. And especially when these cops show up here and I make the call or my wife makes the call, and then you pick up these police reports and they're total lies. A couple examples is one incident with this bail bondsman, Mario, whatever his name is, Vallejos, where I call 911 because he's making threats to me. It's on 911 tape. It's on the hard copy. I have pictures, since I would carry my camera with me, documenting. And yet, Officer Joseph Chavez seems to write reports where I'm the suspect. And not only he, but I noticed that it's happened with other reports. So, we have an escalation of false reports by Joseph Chavez, for one. Incidents that are, if you look at the pictures and everything, if you could only get the video from these police officers' uniforms, which being this 911 call center in Valencia County is the state of the art, and all of these officers supposedly have video cameras on their uniforms, which they seem to lose quite often. But I do have a couple of them. It seems like the only ones I have are off Luis Lopez. Maybe this department's trying to get rid of him too. I don't know. Bad cop. Well, the one incident with Joseph Chavez includes phone harassment. Now, whether it was him or his brother making the phone calls, we can only make assumptions. Unless you can get a federal investigator to pull Michael Chavez aside and question him, truly question him. Because I don't think Michael Chavez made those prank harassing phone calls in October of 2012. I believe they were done by Officer Joseph Chavez. Now that incident right there alone is unbelievable. For 5 days I kept getting these prank phone calls, which started the day after we buried my father-in-law. On this 5th day I actually talked to the guy, because I kept, when he would call 12, 14, 15, 16 times, I just hit my delete button or ignore button on my cell phone when the private number would come up. Well, this 5th day I actually talked to him twice. The second time he said that I couldn't find out who he was because he had a private number. Well, knowing federal law that all numbers being called 800 numbers have to identify a phone number, I set myself up an 800 number that night. I tested it, in which I would get a email following the call. After it was forwarded to this 800 number, it would tell me what number was calling. Well, I got 2 of those the next day. Following my time over at the municipal courthouse where Joseph Chavez was at on his day off, and about 15-20 minutes after I got home after this court date, I was subpoenaed as a witness for something. I came home, I started getting these private number calls. I immediately let them forward to the 800 number, where a few minutes later it generated me an email and showed me the number that was being called from. I found out the number was registered out of Gallup. I called the Gallup Police Department, which is in my phone records. I then called that number and told that number that it was that easy to find out who it was, because digital nowadays, there's a footprint of everything. So I got the numbers, I called this phone number up, I got the emails, I called this phone number up, told them I ain't playing games, and I was taking it to the police department. I took it over to the police department. Chief, first thing he said to me was, "Oh, I have something to ask you about." Okay. I gave him this information. He looked up the phone number in his computer and came back and told me that what he has to ask me is one of his officers commented about I making phone calls to him. Really? And that I had left a couple messages, and that officer had called me to find out what it was all about. Well, that's interesting, because the phone numbers from that officer's phone was called to me first, and I called his number after I received it from my email. And that's the only phones I call that day, or at that time. So right there, and I have this in email by the chief. Right there, something ain't right. So the chief tells me that the officer, Joseph Chavez, talked to Lieutenant Miller and decided to change his phone number, which is fine. I never had his phone number. I never had a reason to have his phone number. Never had a reason to call him. I don't trust him. I don't like him. So I came home, told my wife what happened. She was furious. She wanted an investigation. I don't blame her. When I left the chief, we were both stunned about what I had there in front of us. Well, I and my wife emailed the city, council, mayor, manager, and the police chief requesting a full investigation, which included subpoenaed records of both mine and Chavez's phones. He told me that I need to go to the state police or a third party, county or state. So I went to the state police up in Albuquerque. When I went to the office, they told me that they would not do an investigation. Police chief was also refused initially an investigation by the state police, by the lieutenant in Valencia County. Well, I called the police chief Schilling with the state police and told him that was wrong, that I was on my way to the FBI office with all the information, with all the documents. He agreed with me and said that he would send a police officer over the following week. I still went to the FBI and gave him that information. An officer from the state showed up named Robert Correjo. Robert Correjo took my information, and I hadn't seen him since until one day in June, I believe, at the first court hearing, which he then told me, why don't I just drop everything and forget about it. So, in the meantime, we're in October 2012. It's kind of quiet until January 29th, 2013, when I called, or actually text Chief Rob about loose dogs. That's the only person I call now, or text. And I'm at the point where I won't even do that. I don't trust people at 911. I don't trust the cops here. I don't trust anybody here. So here we are, January 29th. 2 dogs running loose out here. He gets the animal control officer out here. He comes out and gives the 2 owners a ticket. Well, the 2 owners being, one of them being the bail bondsman, Mario Vallejos. His second one, and his second incident with me, making threats to me, being the first one in September 2012, which I have all documented. And the police report's all screwed up, it's all backwards, and it's written by Joseph Chavez. So, January 29th, Animal Control gives the tickets. Mario Vallejos and his daddy show up over here in my cul-de-sac and park up at the street sign, stop sign. I'm out here in my driveway. Daddy brandishes a gun and makes a comment about me coming up. He wants to show me something. Well, I ain't stupid. That's stupid anyway. And I stand in my driveway. My wife hears this commotion going on. She comes to the front door and she sees what's going on with these 2 old guys coming up to me, or these 2 guys coming up to me making threats to me about kicking my ass. She calls 911. It's all documented, folks. She tells them where I'm at, who's out there, who's parked where, and so on. Well, I was ready. We had some words. They walked back to their truck and left. A few minutes later, as I'm just a few seconds later actually, I'm walking up in towards I turn around and grab my phone and my shoes and walking into my house. Belen cop shows up. It's Luis Lopez. He identifies himself 3 times. I told him I'm not going to talk to him 3 times. Calmly. I walk into my house, not run like the police report says. Now, the police report was not written by Luis Lopez because he was escorted off the property by my wife, as the lieutenant and the chief were standing here. Another officer showed up. His name is Adam Keck. He's the one that actually wrote this report. or his name is on the report. Who wrote it? I don't know. But this is an example of what's going on here. That report has it that I'm the suspect, and that I went out to these guys to their truck and wouldn't let them out of one of their doors and made threats of shooting them and all kinds of crap. Well, how much wrong can you get in a police report? When I'm the victim, I'm standing in my driveway, these guys come up to me making threats, my wife is on the phone with 911, it's all recorded. Police reports are showing differently. Why? Police people lie. The audio has the truth on it. Go get it. Two weeks later, I pick up this incident report, and I look at this, and I'm the suspect, and it's got all these lies. And that's when I started getting all of these other police reports. I cannot believe how these police reports are written. I'm always the bad guy. When it's my house is getting stolen from, I'm getting threats made to me, I'm walking my dogs and getting attacked, I'm calling the police for help. And yet, they're turning me into the bad guy. Why? Because I stand my ground. Because I don't have a problem, when I'm in the right, to stand there and show it. I'm in the right. I'm tired of playing these games. There needs to be a federal investigation. Now, my wife contacted the city. She's emailed the mayor, the city council, the manager, Mary Lucy Baca. The previous mayor was, I can't even think of these people's names. Rudy something, Rudy whatever. Now it's Jared Cordova. Jared Cordova. The problem, he was a city council member during this time period too. Now he's the mayor. The city has done nothing except for getting an attorney to write me a letter telling me that I can't go to any public property without calling them, without risk of getting arrested. That's a violation of my rights as well. You wouldn't believe the crap that's gone on here. Now, the courtroom. The magistrate court is a joke. Well, they both are. The municipal court, I refuse to even go in there. I will not go in that place. That woman does not know what she's doing. And you want to talk about bias? This whole area is bias. You have a magistrate court judge that was a cop here in Belen. Now he's a magistrate. He was, until I filed 2 complaints against him with the New Mexico Judicial Commission about his practices. Major violations of civil rights. Oh my God. I'll put that on another video. Alright. So, now I find out that the case was closed. Alright. The incident report on January 29th is totally false. Full of lies. And all against me, when I have everything documented. 2 weeks later, a couple weeks later, I go pick up that incident report. And I asked the chief about the investigation with Joseph Chavez and the prank phone calling. He told me that it was closed. Okay. So I call the state and they tell me that there was a finding of no wrongdoing. Really? And the case was closed. So no one's in trouble for making prank phone calls to me. It's all documented. and they close the case. I call internal affairs for the state police. I file a well, I just left a message. I never talked to anybody the first time. Next thing I know, the lieutenant in Valencia County is calling me, telling me that they reopened the case. He then goes to Phoenix, comes back, and he's been transferred. So I never saw him again or heard from him. They get another lieutenant, acting lieutenant, Oregon, and basically didn't really have much interest in this whole thing, as the way I talked to him. And then there was a third one. Well, I tried getting in touch with him. I talked to him a couple of times, as well as trying to get in touch with Robert Correjo. Robert Correjo was the investigating officer for the state police. First time he found no wrongdoing. After I contacted internal affairs or left a message, they reopened the case the first time, and he found that Michael Chavez, the brother of Joseph Chavez, made the phone calls, or at least he took blame for it. Said he did it while he was on vacation, and that he picked up Joseph Chavez's phone, and my phone number was on there, and made the prank phone calls. Well, I have a problem with that on a number of levels. Number one is Michael Chavez runs a shop up in Albuquerque. Me and him didn't have any problem. Number one, he did not have my personal information, and I have it documented from even the company I was contracted by. He did not have my personal information, and I do not leave it when I do business audits. I did business audits on their Cox Tire Company 2 years in a row. Didn't have any problems until I went up talking to the mom of both Michael and Joseph Chavez, the owner of Cox Tire. All documented. Well, he stated that my phone number was on Joseph's phone and made the prank phone calls, and that it was wrong for him to do it, and he'd never do it again. It was childish. Yeah, it was very childish. And it's awful funny that I did their audit in June, and this happened in October with the prank phone calling, and it began the day after we buried my father-in-law. Now, the phone calls stopped after I brought the information to the police chief. Alright, so I then find out that there was no record subpoenaed by the state police during this investigation, and that Michael Chavez will be charged with harassment by phone at the magistrate's office, courtroom in Belen. Well, there were other incidents, including the next door neighbor, which finally got charged with harassment of me at about the same time this was going on. And the other incidents, it's unbelievable, where this magistrate judge actually did recuse himself, which I'll get into in another video. Except for in this case, he would not recuse himself in this case, which took me 2 letters to the New Mexico Judicial Commission to take care of that. Now, the problem with this whole mess here is that this Officer Robert Correjo of the state police, and this is the typical practice of this magistrate court here, in which if anything is a misdemeanor, then the police are allowed to act as prosecuting attorneys. and the DA does not get involved. I went to the DA's office here. It's a joke. This whole practice with letting cops be prosecuting attorneys is a joke. They have no courtroom abilities, no knowledge except for what they do stand in there. They have no training. They're not even licensed attorneys. And they're prosecuting cases, and then they have cases that are with victims and they don't subpoena them, and then they have cases that are against cops or cops' family. That's wrong, people. That's very wrong. In a magistrate court that used to be a Belen cop? Come on, give me a break. I wasn't born yesterday. There needs to be a federal investigation into this entire area. The way the state cop did not do a complete investigation on another cop because I had the information and it was damaging enough for this career of this cop. So then they have the brother take the fall for it, which now they're risking the business, Cox Tire Company, because of what I have in connection with it, with the business audits, which also has a reputation with this company now, which they won't let me do any more shops, and I don't blame them. But that affects me from doing any of the other tire shops as well, even that same day. So it's not just playing games here with a cop and a phone. You got a cop, either he knows what happened and is trying to cover it up and let the brother take the fall for it and think that everything is just going to go away. Well, no, you've got bad cops there, folks. There's bad cops. You got police reports documented by 911 calls, the ones that you can find. 2 that are missing is also a federal problem, because it is federal law that the 911 call system is supposed to keep all records of calls, period. And they don't have it. I have the email from Shirley that states she doesn't have the 2 phone calls that they're missing. I could go on and on with incidents here. Tons of them. And they were primarily either the next door, they were all either the next door neighbor calling the police for whatever reason, which was harassing me, or it was me walking around this place with my dogs properly attached to my hand, in which I was getting attacked or my dogs were getting attacked by other dogs. The police wouldn't do much of anything if they did anything. And in a couple of the incidents, everything was turned around so it was me as the problem. When I'm walking up and down a ditch bank trying to stay away from people around here, walking my dogs and getting exercise, I now have to take them 35 miles into Albuquerque to the dog park, because I do not trust anybody or these dogs around here that